Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn and today I am going to play along with Kendra's card challenge number 12. What I thought I would really focus in on paper 2 or paper B because I think this one is probably one that if you're anything like me might throw you for a loop just because it's a little bit different. It's not just straight cuts that you can make on your guillotine. So I'm going to show how to cut paper B and then do all of the sketches that actually include paper B. So I am going to start by looking for that scissor icon that tells you where to make your first cut. That places it at 1/2 inch from the bottom. So I've already cut that off. Then I cut from the right 4 1/4, and the piece that's left over, I cut to narrow strips of 1/4 high by 1 3/4 tall. Then what you want to do next, when you look for your next cut, is look for a cut that it goes from one edge to the end without intersecting through another line. So from that piece that remains along the 6-inch edge, I cut it at 3 inches and 4 1/2. That middle block, I cut that into its 3 pieces. And then the first panel that was 3 inches wide, I've cut that to 3 inches by 2 1/2. And then the 2 1/2 by 3, I've cut that to a square that's 2 1/2 square, and then that little 1/2 inch. That's all of our straight cuts done. The part that might look a little bit unusual is the circles that are very clearly cut out. Now, the easiest one I found to do first is this 2 1/2 inch diameter circle, because the square that you cut that from is exactly 2 1/2 inches square. So to cut that, all you need to do is line up the edges of your paper to the cut line of your die. And that should give you a circle that is exactly the right size. I happen to have a set of nested circle dies that fits this perfectly. It actually does have all the stepped increments to match. It happens to be from Spellbinders if you are interested, but there is, because you never can tell with circle dies or any nested dies where they start and stop their steps in terms of the diameters, but this worked out really well. I happen to have exactly the 2 1/2 inch circle and as well the 1 3/4 inch circle, which we'll also need. Now, from that circle, it indicates that you want to cut out of just the bottom half another half circle that is 1 3/4 inch in diameter. So first off, I want to cut that circle in half. So all I've done is line that up so that one of the edges is lined up at 1 1/4, which is half of that. Now, the top portion, that 3 by 3 inch square panel, also has a 2 1/2 inch circle cut out of it. Well, since we already have a half circle, that makes it really easy to, if I just tape that lining up the top edge so that it's nice and flush, then I can nestle my die. This is the 2 1/2 inch diameter die. I can nestle that in and actually just butt it up against that 1/2 inch or half circle that I've already cut, and you should feel it kind of lock into a groove. And I've taped this down super well so it's not budging as it goes through my die cutting machine. So that's how I get the 2 1/2 inch half circle cut out of that 3 by 3 inch square. And once that is done, then the only half circle that's left is the one that is 1 3/4 inch in diameter. At the time that I went to cut this, I wasn't sure how important it is to center this half circle. as it turns out, you only use the half circle. You don't actually use the portion above it. So it doesn't really matter. You don't have to do what I'm about to do because it doesn't need to be precise. But if you want to be precise, because that piece of, like that little leftover arch is perfectly usable, I went ahead and just took my 1 3/4 inch circle die, cut that out of copy paper, and folded it in half. Then I can put that, my half circle of pattern paper inside my folded just copy paper layer. And again, I'm creating a little bit of a lip, a little bit of a groove that I can sort of butt the die into in order to line it up. Again, totally not worth it. Not, I wouldn't say not worth it, but not necessary. You don't have to do it because really the only piece that you'll use in the sketch is just the half circle, not the part surrounding it. I just wasn't sure, so I wanted to center it as best I could and get it to be exactly half of a circle. So that's how you do all of the cutting. Now, I might put most of the rest of this video to some music because I am going to work my way through all of the sketches that actually use paper B. And as it turns out, it's a lot of sketches. Out of the 15 card sketches, paper B is actually used on 9 sketches, and that was a lot more than I was originally anticipating. And so this is going to be a rather long video, but I do want to provide a little bit of commentary because I'm actually not following all of the sketches exactly as they are diagrammed because I'm still trying to work through my 4x6 card bases. I'll be working through these card bases for quite some time, but I'll just continue to note that these card bases are 4x6 as opposed to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, which is USA 2, and that is what the card sketches are designed for. So I'll be doing a little bit of just eyeballing things a little bit and being inspired by the sketch, but not necessarily following it directly. So for example, on this one, I'm clearly just winging the proportions of that center panel because I had already embossed this gorgeous sort of sunflower design that is part of the Birds and the Bees collection. I just thought it worked really well with everything in the Serenade of Autumn, and so I wanted to incorporate that here. But the little strip of pattern paper that should be coming from paper B, I actually did not use here. Instead, I used that bit of blue cardstock, which matches the sentiment banner that is part of the ephemera pack in this collection. And I thought that worked out a lot better than that little bit of pattern paper from paper B. So took a bunch of liberties, but overall, I think you can kind of appreciate that the structure of the sketch is still there, even if the pattern paper isn't, because as it turned out, I didn't use any pattern paper on this card. It's actually just solid color cardstock. So I kind of fudged a little bit on this one, but I think that's how I like to approach sketches, and I think that is something that is going to give you more life out of your sketches than if you were to just strictly follow them as they are designed. So use them as a springboard for ideas, and that can be especially helpful when you just don't have a spark just yet to initiate your card making. Maybe a sketch is a good way to just have something to just start your hands moving. That's how I feel. Like once I get my hands moving, then at some point my creativity does tend to chime in and then take it from there. So this is going to be sketch number 2 here, and again, I'm gonna take some liberties because, as I mentioned, this is being adapted to 4x6. What I wanted to do is a lot of these papers from this collection, they are gorgeous and they have a very, I don't want to say antique, but they have that very subtle, kind of a more subdued coloring to them. All of the papers do. But with all of the ephemera pieces, they have very bright white borders. And I wanted to knock that back a little bit because it just seems like it would go a lot better with the pattern papers to ink around those edges a little bit. So what I did on my card base itself to get rid of that white border was I used Graphic 45's hybrid ink. This is natural linen. It's a really nice kind of, I don't have old paper. I think that's what it's called, the Distress Oxide. Is it old paper? I know there's vintage photo, but I think old paper is slightly lighter than vintage photo. Vintage photo would be great as well. Natural linen is great because it's more of a, tea stain, just like that look of paper that's aged. And so it's not brown, it's just a little bit of a kind of a old dusty, like a yellowy ivory. And I felt like that fit in with these papers really well. So where I remembered to do it, I tried to ink all of the edges of the ephemera pieces just so that I don't have that bright white border. What's lovely about the papers and the ephemera, as always with collections like these, where this one is a la carte. So you can pick up the papers, you can pick up the ephemera, the chipboard stickers, all separately if you wanted. It's not part of a kit, but as with all of the collections that are similar to this, some of the papers will have some spot foiling on them. Some of the die-cut ephemera pieces will have foiling. This one's really lovely because the ephemera pack does come with sentiments and a really nice variety of sentiments. And I think most, if not all of them, are gold foiled sentiments. Really, really lovely. As well, I used up a lot of these little gold foil hearts. They're really cute because they aren't your standard round heart, nor are they the sort of the primitive hearts that are elongated. They're a little bit more stylized because they sort of have a very swoopy end to them, and I think they're really cute. They're something a little bit different, which I love. Okay, so now we're getting into sketch number 3. Definitely want to talk through this one, and I will also slow down the video just so that it's a little bit easier to see what I'm doing and follow along. This is probably, if I'm allowed to pick favorites, this is probably my favorite sketch out of the 15 this quarter because it's so different and I love the movement of it. I love this, the soft curves, and it looks hard to do. It looks very impressive, but once you have seen the trick, it's really cool and a lot easier to do than I would have thought. So here's how I approached it. Now, what you'll need from paper B is one of the 2.5-inch half circles and the smaller half circle, the one that is 1 3/4 of an inch. Besides those 2 half circles, we need an additional 6 half circles, and they will be in different sizes. So how I approach getting my 6 half circles is I'm going to cut 3 more circles, and I cut the circles at 2.5 inch, one of those, and I cut 2 more circles at 2.25 inch. You can cut those out of solid color cardstock, more pattern paper, whatever you like. I'm going to do a combination of the two because I like to use my solid color cardstock to give the eyes a bit of a resting place, and then that way they act a bit as a buffer so that it borders my pattern papers, and that way the pattern papers are a little bit easier to distinguish from one another. What I would recommend is that you figure out what order you want these half circles to be stacked, because they are stacked in reverse. The upper stack has the larger piece of pattern B, and then the lower stack has the smaller half circle that is from pattern B. And what I'm going to do is cut my 3 circles, and then I'm going to cut those in half. And that gets me a starting point for my 6 half circles. The other circle sizes you'll need are, you'll need that 2.5, you need the 2.25, you also need a 2-inch circle, and as well, you'll need to bring back out that 1.75 inch. So essentially, they just have 1/4 inch steps. And again, I cut a circle at 2.5, and then I cut 2 more circles out at 2.25. And what you might notice is that if you look at the sketch, they're in reverse order. So if I look at the mid gray tone half circles, it's the largest size on the bottom, but it's the smallest size on the top stack. And then if I look at the black half circles and the lightest gray half circles, those are, for example, the black, it's the second largest on the top, but it's the 3rd largest on the bottom. And with the lighter gray, it's the reverse. It's the 3rd largest at the top and the 2nd largest at the bottom. So that's why I'm able to just cut the larger sizes, and then for the other half, I'll just use a smaller circle and cut the smaller size that I need from that same pattern or solid color cardstock, whatever you happen to be using. So this happens to just be a more efficient cut. You could always, there's 6 half circles that you need in different sizes. You could just cut 6 full circles out in all of those different sizes, and then cut each of those in half. You would use half on this card and then maybe save the other half for another card. So that's another way to approach it as well. But I'm going to do it this way, and then one thing that I would definitely recommend if you do it this way is to actually set the order so that you can clearly see, and it's a good reminder of which piece needs to stay full and which piece needs to, which piece can you die cut the smaller half from. So I have taken my brown paper, which is the largest on the bottom, but it's the smallest on the top. And I cut my 1.75 inch half circle from that. Then my pattern paper, that's the lighter blue with the gold foiling, that is the 2nd largest on the bottom, but it's the 3rd largest at the top. So I cut a 2-inch circle out of that top half. And my dark teal is the reverse of that pattern paper that I just cut. So on the bottom, it's the 3rd largest. So the bottom portion is where I need to cut my smaller 2-inch circle out of what was originally 2 1/4. And that is going to give me all of the half circles that I need, but I didn't have to cut extra circles. I think it is a little bit of extra work to keep that all organized and everything, but if you are working with gorgeous pattern papers and you want to conserve and make your pattern paper stretch a little bit and use it on multiple different card designs, then this might be a good option. But if you want to keep things really simple, you could, like I said, just cut out each of these as full circles, cut it in half, and then save half of it for another card. Totally up to you, whatever works for you and whatever you're trying to optimize for. Simplicity versus maybe conserving a little bit on your pattern papers. So before I start to set the rest of this video to some music, let me kind of tell you a little bit about Kendra's card challenge if you are new to it, because I skipped doing that at the beginning. Kendra's card challenge is free to play along with. It's a quarterly challenge. You have 3 chances to enter. You can enter once a month by completing all 15 cards, taking a photo of them, and then submitting that photo into the appropriate album on the Kendra's Card Challenge Facebook group. The PDF is free to download, and I'll leave a link to it in the description box below. It will show you a cutting guide for cutting down 6 sheets of pattern paper, and then as well included in that PDF is 15 card sketches which show you exactly how to use those pieces that you cut from your 6x6 pattern papers. There are going to be portions of the sketch that don't use any of the pattern papers that were cut, and those will be represented in shades of gray. What that means is that you can bring to that card sketch whatever you'd like, whether that's more pattern papers, like I'm doing a lot of in this set here because the pattern papers are just so gorgeous, but it could be your own inky background, it could be color cardstock, it could be an embossed panel, it could be a gel print, it can be whatever you'd like. So there is still a lot of room for interpretation. As I mentioned, I'm using my 4x6 card bases, so I'm having to just adapt a lot of this to whatever kind of looks right to my eyes, and you are more than welcome to do that. This is a card sketch challenge, but it doesn't mean you have to follow the sketches to the T, as long as you've been inspired by the sketch and that we can clearly see that it's been originated from the card sketch. That's really enough to play along and possibly win one of several prizes that have been donated by a lot of sponsors. So we have so many generous sponsors who have donated prizes and super sponsors who have not only donated prizes that you can win, but as well donated product to our design team to craft with. So that's Kendra's card challenge. I hope you'll play along and check that out because there's lots of different opportunities to win. The collection that I'm crafting with, I think I mentioned, is the Serenade of Autumn by Spellbinders, and this collection is really, it's very cool because it's got a little bit of everything, and I'm really loving that Spellbinders is having these collections that spanned so many different product lines. So by that I mean that there's 6x6 pattern papers, there's the die cut ephemeras that I'm using, chipboard stickers, there's the embellishments that come in this collection, but as well there's also some stamps and dies that come in this collection. There are some better press plates, there's a wax seal, I think there's a stencil set, and there are two new things that I haven't seen. Not to say that they haven't ever done it before, I just don't remember seeing the vellum that you can get as an a la carte item in this collection. It's 6x6 vellum that's been gold foiled, and you get 6 sheets, 3 different designs, so you'll have 2 of each. So that I thought was kind of new, and I craft with it a little bit later on one of my cards. And what I haven't played with yet are the watercolor panels that have been clear embossed already with a design. So if you're familiar with the emboss resist technique, it's a really lovely technique where you emboss in clear, or you can emboss with white, whichever you'd like. And then when you go to apply your watercolor to that panel, what's been embossed, that paper has been protected, and so it will resist taking on any color. And that way, as you're applying your watercolors, it is actually coloring the background, and the design is going to stay nice and white. So that's really cool. I don't think I've seen that. And again, that, similar to the vellum, has 6 sheets, 2 of each design. So I can't wait to play with that one. I think that'll be really fun. And so really cool how big this collection is, and how expansive it is, because it does cover, there's a little bit from basically every product line I think that Spellbinders does. So I'll leave links to what I crafted with today, but as well some of the other items that I think I'll be crafting with soon. And that way, if you're curious and you would like to check any of that out, you can have direct links to it. Thank you so much for checking out my video today, and if you do ever use any of my affiliate links, thank you so much. I really appreciate the support, and I know that while it doesn't cost you anything extra, you do have a lot of choices of content creators that I'm sure you love to support, and so spread the love, and thanks for using my links when you do. I am always very appreciative of that. And so I'll just go ahead and set the rest of this video to some music, and you can continue to see these cards evolve. I won't rejoin you at the end, so go ahead and say my goodbyes now. Thanks again for joining me on this one, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye.